Picture this. It is 2:17 in the morning at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, and I am standing beside a luggage cart with one bad wheel. Every time I move it, the cart pulls hard to the left. The air smells like floor cleaner, coffee, and that warm dampness you feel the second the sliding doors open. Families are pressed against the railings. Drivers are holding cardboard signs. Phones are ringing. People are waving and crying and laughing, and nobody is there for me. I keep looking at the same photograph on my phone. A woman in a yellow blouse smiling beside a flowering tree. She told me she would be waiting with a red scarf tied around her wrist. I scan every face. I check the arrivals board. I walk to the other side of the terminal, then back again. No red scarf, no message, no woman. By then I already knew what had happened. I had known for weeks, if I am being honest. I just had not admitted it out loud. $24,000. That is what the romance cost me. $24,000. And 3 months after I finally accepted that she had never loved me, I still got on a plane and moved to the Philippines. My name is Daniel Mercer. I am 68 years old. I grew up outside Columbus, Ohio, and I spent 37 years working in industrial maintenance. Most of that time, I supervised a crew at a food packaging plant. If a conveyor stopped at 3 in the morning, my phone rang. If a motor started making a sound nobody else could identify, they came looking for me. I was the man who fixed things. That was how I saw myself. Reliable, practical, hard to fool. I was married for 29 years. My wife Susan and I raised 2 daughters in a small brick house with a maple tree in the front yard. Our marriage did not end with some dramatic betrayal. It wore down slowly. Too many late shifts, too many quiet dinners, too many years of saying we would take a trip when work slowed down. Work never slowed down. By the time we divorced, the girls were grown. Susan had built a life that did not include me, and I had a garage full of tools, but no idea what to do on a Saturday afternoon. Retirement made it worse. People talk about retirement like it is a permanent vacation. Nobody tells you what it feels like when your name disappears from the schedule. One Friday, 20 men need your decision. On Monday, nobody calls. You wake up at 6 because your body still thinks it has somewhere to be. Then you sit at the kitchen table listening to the refrigerator turn on and off. I had enough money to survive, but not enough to feel free. My Social Security and pension together came to a little over $2,300 a month. The mortgage was paid off, but taxes, insurance, utilities, prescriptions, and groceries kept climbing. A new roof took a bite out of my savings. Dental work took another one. Then my oldest daughter asked if I had considered selling the house and moving closer to her. She meant well. I know that now. But what I heard was, "Dad, you are becoming a problem we need to organize." I started spending too much time online. It began with retirement videos, then travel videos, then videos about living overseas on less money. The Philippines kept appearing. Men my age talked about warm weather, affordable rent, English being widely spoken, and neighbors who still noticed when you were missing. That last part got me, neighbors who noticed. One evening, I joined a Facebook group for people interested in retiring in the Philippines. I asked a question about monthly expenses. A woman named Maribel replied. She said she lived outside Tagaytay and had helped her uncle find an apartment there. Her message was simple. You ask honest questions. Most foreign men only ask about young women. I laughed when I read it. I told her I had 2 daughters and knew better than to behave like an idiot online. I know. Famous last words. At first we talked about ordinary things, weather, food, my work at the plant, her small online clothing business. She was 46, divorced, and said she cared for her widowed mother. She sent photographs of coffee on a balcony, laundry drying behind a house, a bowl of soup she said she had cooked. There was nothing glamorous about it. That made it feel real. She never asked for money during the first month. That mattered to me. We spoke every morning and every evening. The time difference gave my days a shape. I would wake up to a message, I would make coffee and sit at the kitchen table while she told me about rain hitting the metal roof. At night she would call while I walked through my empty house checking locks that did not need checking. She remembered small things. My younger daughter's birthday, the name of the medication I took for blood pressure, the song Susan and I had danced to at our wedding. Being remembered can feel a lot like being loved when you have been lonely long enough. The first request was $600. Her mother had fallen in the bathroom, she said. There was a hospital deposit. She showed me a photograph of an older woman in a bed. She sent a picture of a paper with numbers on it. I did not understand the document, but I understood fear. I sent the money. She cried on the video call. She covered her mouth with both hands. She said nobody had ever helped her family like that. I felt useful again. That is the part I am most ashamed to admit. It was not only affection. It was the feeling that somebody needed me. After that, the emergencies came carefully, not every week, not enough to look obvious. A damaged laptop she needed for her business. A supplier payment that had to be made before a holiday. Medicine for her mother, school fees for a niece whose father had disappeared. Then came the biggest one. She said she had found a small commercial space near a busy road where we could open a laundry service after I moved. She called it our future. She sent photographs of a narrow building with a green roll-up door. She showed me handwritten estimates for washing machines, plumbing, and rent. $8,000. I told her I could not send that much. She did not argue. She became quiet. Then she said, "Maybe you do not really believe we will have a life together." That sentence worked on me better than any threat could have. I sent $4,000 first, then $2,000, then the rest in smaller transfers over the next month. My bank called once. A woman in the fraud department asked whether I knew the recipient personally. I said yes. That was a lie. By the end, I had sent $24,000 in a little under 9 months. $24,000. I had transferred part of my roof fund, part of my emergency savings, and money I had promised myself I would never touch. Then the video calls stopped. Maribel said her phone camera was broken. She still sent voice messages, but they became shorter. When I asked to see the laundry space live on camera, she got offended. When I asked for the address, she said I did not trust her. One afternoon, a man from the Facebook group messaged me privately. He had seen a photograph I posted of Maribel and me on a video call. He said he recognized her, not as Maribel. He sent me screenshots from another profile. Different name, different hometowns, same yellow blouse, same flowering tree. In one photograph, she was standing beside a man who called her his wife. I stared at that screen for nearly an hour. I wanted the evidence to be fake. I wanted the stranger to be jealous. I wanted any explanation that would let me keep the life I'd been imagining. I called her. She answered audio only. I asked one question. "Is your name really Maribel?" There was a long silence. I could hear a television in the background and a rooster somewhere outside. Then the call ended. She blocked me within minutes. I did not tell my daughters. I did not tell my brother. I did not report it right away because reporting it meant putting the whole thing into words. It meant saying that a 68-year-old man who had spent his life repairing complex machinery could not see that he was being taken apart one transfer at a time. For 6 weeks, I barely left the house. I stopped opening the retirement groups. I stopped watching travel videos. I ate frozen dinners over the sink. I slept in the recliner because going upstairs felt like too much effort. The worst part was not the money. The worst part was hearing her voice in my memory and realizing every tender sentence had probably been chosen for a purpose. Then one morning, my younger daughter came by without calling. She found unopened mail on the counter and asked what was wrong. I told her I had lost money on an investment. She looked at me for a few seconds and said, "Dad, was it a woman?" I started crying before I answered. There is no graceful way to tell your daughter that you sent money to somebody you believed you would marry. I expected anger. I expected a lecture. Instead, she sat beside me and put her hand on my shoulder. She said, "You were lonely. That does not make you stupid. But staying alone because you are embarrassed will destroy you faster than the money did." That sentence stayed with me. A week later, I reported the transfers to my bank and filed the paperwork I should have filed earlier. I recovered almost nothing. I changed passwords. I deleted photographs. I wrote down every lie I could remember, not because I enjoyed punishing myself, but because I needed to see the pattern clearly. Then I did something that surprised everyone, including me. I went back to researching the Philippines, not romance, the country. I watched videos made by families, retirees, teachers, doctors, and small business owners. I read expat forums, including the ugly posts and the honest ones. I joined groups where dating talk was banned. I asked about hospitals, power outages, rent deposits, transportation, banking, weather, and what happened when you needed help at night. I spoke to 3 retired men on video calls. One lived in Iloilo, one lived in Bohol, one lived in Tagaytay and had been there 11 years. He was a former postal worker from Michigan named Curtis. Curtis did not sell me paradise. He told me about mold, traffic, paperwork, homesickness, and getting overcharged because he was too embarrassed to ask the price first. He also told me his landlord brought soup when he had dengue, his neighbors checked on him during a storm, and his monthly expenses were lower than what I had been paying in Ohio. He said, "Do not move here for a woman. Move here because the place itself fits the life you want." That was the first advice about the Philippines I fully trusted. I sold the house. My daughters thought I was reacting to the scam. Maybe part of me was. But I had tried everything else first. I looked at apartments near both daughters. I priced senior communities. I considered staying in Ohio and taking part-time work. Every option felt like arranging the same empty life more efficiently. I did not want efficiency. I wanted a life that required me to wake up. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a folder of documents, and rules I had written for myself. No lending money, no investing in businesses I did not control, no romantic commitments during the first year, no pretending I understood something when I did not. At the airport that night, nobody was supposed to meet me. That mattered. I had arranged a car through my hotel and verified the driver's name twice. When I saw my name printed on a white sign, I nearly laughed from relief. The drive to Tagaytay took longer than expected. Manila lights gave way to dark roads, roadside stores, and sudden bursts of traffic around towns I could not name. I watched motorbikes move between cars like water finding cracks. Rain began halfway there, hard and loud against the windshield. By morning, the air was cooler than I expected. I stepped outside with a cup of strong coffee and smelled wet soil, charcoal smoke, and something sweet from a bakery down the road. Roosters called from behind a wall. A tricycle rattled past with plastic curtains flapping at the sides. It was not the life Maribel had described. It was better because it was real. For the first month, I stayed in a small furnished unit while I looked for something permanent. I found an apartment on the quieter side of Tagaytay for 22,000 pesos a month, roughly $390 at the time. 1 bedroom, tile floors, a narrow balcony, a kitchen sink that dripped until I replaced the washer myself. 22,000 pesos, about $390. Back in Ohio, my property tax and insurance alone had averaged more than that. The apartment was not luxurious. The water pressure changed depending on the hour. Ants appeared if I left 1 crumb on the counter. The neighbor's dog believed sunrise began at 4:30. But I could open the balcony door and feel cool air. I could walk to a small restaurant where a bowl of bulalo arrived steaming with beef, corn, cabbage, and broth, rich enough to make my glasses fog. I could buy fruit from a woman who corrected my pronunciation without making me feel foolish. Her name was Tess. She was about my age and ran the stand with her son. The first time I tried to ask for ripe mangoes, I used the wrong word. She laughed, then saw my face and touched my arm. "Not laughing at you," she said. "Laughing because you sound like my brother when he speaks English." That tiny kindness loosened something in me. I began building routines. Coffee at 6. A walk before the traffic grew heavy. Groceries on Tuesday, laundry on Thursday. Video calls with my daughters every Sunday. I met Curtis in person. He was shorter than he looked online and wore the same battered baseball cap almost every day. He introduced me to a group of retirees who met twice a month. Some were married, some were single. Some had made smart decisions. Some had made mistakes much more expensive than mine. Nobody needed me to pretend. That was new. One afternoon, Curtis asked whether I regretted coming. We were sitting under a covered patio while rain hammered the roof so hard we had to lean closer to hear each other. I looked at the wet street, the steam rising from our coffee, and a little boy pushing a toy truck through a puddle. I said, "I regret why I almost came. I do not regret why I stayed. There is a difference." I did not find instant happiness. I want to be honest about that. Loneliness does not disappear when your plane lands. Shame does not get confiscated at customs. For the first few months, every friendly woman made me suspicious. Every request for help sounded like the beginning of another trap. I had to learn that caution and bitterness are not the same thing. Caution checks facts. Bitterness decides everybody is guilty before they speak. I refuse to let one person turn an entire country into evidence against itself. About 8 months after I arrived, Tessa's son asked whether I could look at a small motor that powered a grinding machine behind their house. It had stopped working and the repair shop wanted to replace the whole unit. I took my old multimeter from the toolbox I had packed from Ohio. The problem was a burned connection and a damaged capacitor. We found the part in town. I repaired it at a plastic table while 3 children watched like I was performing surgery. When the motor started, everybody cheered. Tess brought out food. Her son tried to pay me. I refused. The next morning, a bag of mangoes and warm bread appeared outside my door. For the first time since retirement, I felt like the man who fixed things again. Not because somebody had invented an emergency to pull money from me, because a real neighbor had asked for real help. That difference is worth more than I can explain. I have been here a little over 2 years now. My monthly spending usually stays between $1,500 and $1,700, depending on medical appointments and travel. I keep a larger emergency fund than I used to. I verify everything. I do not combine romance and money. I have dated carefully, nothing dramatic, no promises after 2 weeks, no shared businesses, no secret hospital bills. The woman I see now has her own work, her own family, and a talent for telling me when I am being stubborn. We meet for lunch, we walk, we take our time. My daughters have visited. The oldest stood on my balcony one cool morning, wrapped in a sweater she had mocked me for telling her to pack. She watched fog move across the hills and said, "I understand it now." That meant more to me than any approval I thought I needed. I am not telling this story because moving overseas is the answer for every lonely retired man. It is not. I am not telling it because scams only happen online or because the Philippines is free of danger. It is not. I am telling it because shame almost made my next decision for me. I lost $24,000. I lost the woman I thought existed. I lost the version of myself who believed experience made him impossible to fool. But I did not lose the rest of my life. Sometimes I think back to that imagined airport scene, the one Maribel had promised me. She would be waiting in a yellow blouse with a red scarf around her wrist. I would push my luggage through the doors. She would run toward me. Everything lonely in my life would finally make sense. That scene never happened. The real scene was quieter. I arrived alone. A hired driver held a plain white sign with my name on it. Rain struck the windshield. I watched unfamiliar roads pass in the darkness, not knowing whether I had made the bravest decision of my life or one more terrible mistake. 2 years later, I know the answer. I was not rescued at the airport. I rescued what was left of myself.